The day my life cracked open did not begin with romance or hope, but with the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing against my chest before sunrise, the kind that makes breathing feel like work and not a gift. I was tying my son Noah's shoelaces with trembling fingers, already late, already apologizing to a world that never seemed to wait for people like me. I did not know that this would be the day everything I misunderstood would finally collide into one unforgettable moment, the day I realized I had been loved loudly and quietly at the same time, and too blind to see it. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet love that waits patiently. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. My name is Daniel Harper, and for 3 years I lived on the edge of barely holding things together. I was a single dad by circumstance, not choice, raising a 6-year-old boy who still slept with the hallway light on and believed his father could fix anything. His mother had left one rainy afternoon with a suitcase and an apology that sounded practiced, leaving behind silence that echoed in every room. Since then, life had become a routine of early mornings, packed lunches, daycare drop-offs, and long nights staring at the ceiling wondering if I was failing him without knowing how. Work was not a passion, just survival. I worked as a senior analyst at a fast-growing company where efficiency was worshipped and vulnerability was quietly punished. And at the center of that world stood my boss, Clara Whitman. Clara was everything I was not. Confident. Sharp. Always 5 steps ahead. She walked into rooms like she owned the air itself, her presence commanding attention without asking for it. People said she was intimidating, distant, impossible to please. To me, she was simply my boss, the one who approved my leave requests with a neutral nod, who asked about project deadlines but never pried into my life. Or so I thought. I did not notice the way she scheduled meetings later on the days I mentioned daycare issues. I did not register how she quietly reassigned travel-heavy projects away from me. I told myself she was fair, professional, nothing more. Love was the last thing on my mind. I was too busy surviving. Every evening, after putting Noah to bed, I would sit at the kitchen table with my laptop, finishing work I could not complete during the day. The house would be silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Some nights I would catch myself staring at nothing, imagining a version of life where things were easier, where someone noticed how tired I was and stayed anyway. Then I would shake it off and remind myself that fantasies did not pack lunches or pay bills. At work, pressure grew. A major presentation loomed, one that could determine the future of our department. Clara was under scrutiny from the board, and she pushed everyone hard, including me. I took on extra tasks, skipped lunches, worked through headaches and the dull ache in my back. I told myself this was what being responsible looked like. What I did not tell myself was how lonely it felt to be seen only as reliable, never as human. The meeting that changed everything came on a Thursday afternoon. The room was full, tension thick, the kind that makes people sit straighter and breathe shallower. Numbers were dissected, strategies questioned, mistakes magnified. I stood presenting my analysis, aware that my voice sounded steadier than I felt. When an error was pointed out, one I had missed after a night with barely any sleep because Noah had a fever, I froze. My mind raced, panic rising. I tried to explain, but the words tangled. The room seemed to shrink, and then something snapped. Clara, who had been unusually quiet, stood up. Her composure cracked in a way none of us had ever seen. Her voice rose, not with anger at the numbers, but with something raw and unfiltered. She shouted that she was tired of watching me punish myself, tired of dropping hints I never caught, tired of caring in silence. In front of everyone, she declared her love, called me an idiot for never seeing it, and the room fell into stunned silence so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. That I stood there, heart pounding, blood roaring in my ears, shame and disbelief mixing into something overwhelming. I had never considered that someone like her could see someone like me that way. I had mistaken kindness for professionalism, concern for management. The meeting ended abruptly. People avoided eye contact. I left the room feeling exposed, confused, and strangely seen. The days that followed were a blur. Clara took leave, rumors spread, and I retreated further into myself. I questioned everything, replayed moments I had dismissed. The coffee she always made extra strong on mornings I looked exhausted. The way she remembered Noah's name. The softness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. I realized how deeply I had buried my own capacity to be loved, how convinced I was that my life had no room for it. One evening, as Noah slept, I sat alone and let myself feel it all. The grief of losing my old life. The fear of hoping again. The ache of realizing that love had been standing in front of me, waving desperately, while I stared at the ground. I understood then that survival had turned into a shield, one that protected me from pain but also from joy. When Clara returned, things were different. There were consequences, apologies made in private offices, boundaries discussed. But there was also honesty. Slow conversations. Shared silences that did not feel awkward. She did not try to save me. She simply stood beside me, steady and patient, as I learned how to let someone in without feeling like I was failing my son or myself. Noah met her one Sunday afternoon at the park. He watched her carefully at first, then offered her a dandelion with the seriousness only a child can muster. She accepted it like it was priceless. In that moment, I saw a future that did not erase my past but grew from it, imperfect and real. Life did not become magically easy. There were still late nights, still fears, still days when grief resurfaced without warning. But there was also laughter in the kitchen, shared glances that said more than words, and the quiet understanding that love does not always arrive gently. Sometimes it yells in a meeting because it has waited long enough. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of love you almost missed or kindness you did not recognize at first, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Before the ending, tell us in the comments if you have ever realized too late that someone cared deeply for you, or if you are still waiting for the courage to see what is right in front of you, because some of us are not unlovable, just exhausted, and sometimes love has to shout before we finally listen.